Hey. We are recording our live podcast. I'm going to read a thing. Are you going to push record? Hang on.
We're getting there, guys.
Okay.
You ready?
Yeah. Hi guys, welcome. I have a fan shout out that I wanted to read, and it is titled Honesty. Thank you for being brave enough to express very honest feelings on your podcast. Thank you for having courage to talk about subjects that no one else wants to talk about. My only critique is that I feel Ashlynn has not been talking enough on the podcast as normal. Hopefully everything is well. Thank you for all the help you're giving couples with real struggles. So I'm just going to speak to that. Everything's good. I don't feel like I've changed any, and we hear reviews like, Ashlynn's talking more, Ashlynn's not talking enough. I'm just quiet, guys.
Yeah.
This is our personalities, and
Coby's like out there talker or go get it, and Ashlynn is a little
totally
quiet. And sometimes people feel like, Ashlynn, your voice is kind of subdued, and that we hear more from the addict side of things, or that's not our intention. It's just who you guys are.
Definitely.
Right?
So I'm definitely trying to share my side of this as well. So
yeah,
that's us.
Awesome. Well, let's jump into today's topic, and I think it's an important topic, and one that I think we could have done a long time ago. So we're talking about why it's important, really the order of treatment. When you come in, you do an intake with a therapist. They start in, if they know what they're doing, then the therapist is going to assess you and see how, kind of where you're at in terms of recovery. And they're looking at 3 recoveries. They're looking at her recovery, his recovery, and your recovery together, right? His, hers, and ours.
Which I had no clue about going into this.
Right, you just go to a therapist to try to get fixed, right?
Yes, we'd always in the past gone to therapy as a couple because we had couples problems.
Right. So with sex addiction, it's a little different. So when you go to a couples therapist, you sit down, and the couples therapist usually does some Sue Johnson stuff, which is EF, emotionally focused couples therapy, or they do some Gottman stuff, and so they do couples work to try to work toward connection. But think about it, when you're going in to sit with a therapist and you have betrayal trauma and sex addiction involved, if I'm going to just try to force some EFT or force some kind of connection on you in that moment, but the foundation of the healing individually hasn't taken place yet, then I'm actually going to do more damage to the couple than good. And so
but can you say more as to why?
Yes.
Why that's the case?
Yeah, so if I have a sex addict who's hiding things still, acting out compulsively still, and destroying trust in the relationship, and they come into a couples session together, and they say, hey guys, let's learn how to be intimate, let's learn how to be close, let's practice how to communicate in those ways. I'm going to be pushing her further than she really needs to go for what's healthy in that moment. He's not going to be ready either to be vulnerable with her on that level. And so it's a lot of wasted money, and it's a lot of wasted time, because it just does not work. The therapist can give skills, they can give tools, they can give all those things, but unless some things are healed first, individually, the relationship won't work.
I think we can speak to that, because that was exactly, like legit 18 months before we started specialized therapy, that's exactly where we were, is seeing a therapist who just was a great woman, a good individual therapist, a general therapist. Man, we spun our wheels, and even though addiction was on the table for us, right, as like
right.
She knew what was up, and she knew about the first affair, but I was in love with the second affair actually. While we were seeing her.
Which proves your point, Brandon.
Yeah, listen to that. I'm in the middle of... So a good CSAT or a specialized therapist would be able to pick up on your disconnect and your denial, and start to hone in on that and confronting that, rather than like forcing the couple to try to figure things out to make it better.
Because really the focus would turn into like, why isn't Ashlynn saying anything? What's wrong with Ashlynn? And trying to figure me out. And I was like, I don't know what's wrong with me.
Meanwhile, Coby's having his second affair.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right?
And
yeah.
So there was enormous disconnection, but it was like the way that we described it a lot is this elephant was in the room and we were like dancing around it, not like we weren't tiptoeing, we were just like working around it in circles, and I really just feel like we left we didn't have any more skills, we didn't have any more connection, and I would actually leave. Do you remember? I would leave like super, super mad after every session, and it would take me like a mile and a half down the road until I could like let go of being angry. But we didn't realize that was not normal considering what our issues were.
right. So when we did our intake, when we found specialized help, the therapist that actually knew what to diagnose, right? I remembered them giving this plan to us of saying, "Okay, Coby, we want you to do these things, and Ashlynn, we want you to do these."
Right.
And couples therapy wasn't even on the plan, and I was
Right.
like, "This is kind of weird."
Right.
And kind of uncomfortable, honestly.
So a couple usually comes to therapy because their relationship is so painful that they wanted to change. And so the relationship, or the nasty, broken down relationship, that's a symptom, but it's just a symptom of individual unhealthiness. And so if you come into treatment and you say, hey, let's fix the relationship, but you don't address that unhealthiness in the individuals, then it doesn't get better. So I oftentimes, when I do an intake or I'll meet with a couple a few times, I'll tell them, look, we're not going to do couples work for 6 months or a year even. We're going to separate you guys out in your treatment. We're going to make individualized treatment plans. You're going to check in with each other. So we'll have sessions here and there with you, but it's more logistical. It's kind of seeing where you're at, what's going on, how, maybe we can work through some things that you can't communicate on just so you can move forward with life. But we're not working on real intimacy here. We're not working on the deeper stuff yet until we can get your shame under control, until we can get the compulsive behaviors out of the way, until the betrayal trauma, you can learn how to deal with those triggers in a healthy way, practice your emotion regulation, a lot of different things on an individual level. And as each person works individually, if you start to work individually and get healthy, the couples work is actually fairly simple. It's not that hard because both people are coming to the table prepared for healthy attachment and healthy connection.
I'm going to say something that may be like super annoying, but I would say the couples work for us has been more fun.
Yeah, it is
Because
fun.
it took us a while to get there, years to get there in our case. But it's been fun because we are really learning skills that help us in parenting and all these things. And it's not recovery related anymore.
Yeah.
It's like being a human.
Yeah, but you know what? A good, healthy relationship is a lot of work, but it is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And it comes easy. If I'm resilient to my shame, if I don't have massive secrets underneath, things that I'm hiding, if I can accept what is as it comes, then my wife can be mad, she can be upset, she can be in a great place. I can be there with her and she can feel my love. I can connect to her, I can be a support for her, I can empathize with her. But the only way that I'm going to be able to do that, healthy attachment, is to be able to be strong myself, right?
I think there's a couple things to keep across our mind. Number one is when we went to therapy, it was because we would think like there's something broken, it needs to be fixed. Okay, I think that was our mentality with going to therapy, right? And I think that's generally speaking like really accurate for how people view therapy in general. Okay, is something's broken, you need to fix it. Well, nobody ever wants to be fixed, right?
I am the broken.
Right? Because that's exactly what it's acknowledging is I'm the broken, I'm the one that's got the problem. And that's a really hard thing to face if you have an addiction or if you have betrayal trauma, but that's just hard to acknowledge and admit, especially to other people, even if you're not dealing with those things.
Right.
So I think the idea with this is and that's why the title's what it is why we worked on the me before the we. And so if you approach this as like, okay, in our marriage, there's struggles but that's a normal thing, and we have to work on this rather than go to someone with the expectation that they're going to fix it.
Yes.
The therapist is going to guide you through the road of work to get to where you want to be, so that you can individually heal, and then as a couple. And I think that if you have that expectation going into it, I think you'll realize this isn't a one and done. This isn't like a 1 or 2 visits. How long do we need to go until we're fixed? Not like
we asked that. Don't worry.
Right.
We said how many more times until we don't have to come.
Then we'll get better.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And
you'll fix us, and we'll get better.
Right. And the truth is that it's like the way that I view that in my head is I thought, okay, our degree of really crappy times in our relationship is measured on a scale of 1 to 10. Okay, I'm just using some really simple ways of measuring it. So things really suck because I've been relapsing. So the difficulty scale is at a 7 out of 10, or maybe it's a 10 out of 10. And so when I would feel like in the past that if we could be fixed with therapy, then what that fixed was in my head, and I didn't realize this is what I was thinking is if we can just get the really uncomfortable emotional charge and discord out of our life, and we're back down to 0, then we're okay. I want to get back to normal to where it's not uncomfortable anymore. But that's a fallacy.
Spoken like a true addict. I don't want to feel any pain.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah. I don't want to feel any pain. I want this to go away. I want this to be fixed. Again, synonymous with I have strep throat, I want a Z-Pack, and I want to be done with this in 7 days. I want to feel really good in 48 hours because I just want it to go away.
And fixed is Ashlyn smiling saying, we're good.
Yes.
We're fine.
We're good, and I want to have lots of sex even though you're watching porn.
Yeah, we're fine. So,
right?
That's not fixed.
Coby says that in jest, but he really did.
Oh no, I legit really wanted that. It was like, let's fix this whole issue around sex, and it was like I had no idea how much devastation I was wreaking on.
And I think that's why when all of this happened, I mean, I would go to couples therapy with our family therapist we went 18 months. And it was kind of like this chore for me because I'm not getting anything out of it.
Right.
It was spinning in circles. But when we really went and said, okay, we're going to go and really do this and work recovery, and to be here, Brandon is not our therapist.
Right.
Some people are confused by that. I was mad. Like, why do I have to do as much work as you?
Yeah.
Right.
And so you might be feeling that if you're listening and thinking, we only have money for him to go, and so he's got the biggest problem. He's going to work on it. Even if you're not working with a therapist, there's so many things you can be doing to work on you.
Right. And I want to hang on to that and address that in a minute because I think that's really important, especially for the betrayed.
Yes.
Where you come into therapy and it's like, look, my husband's acting out with sex and he's doing all this crazy stuff, and you're telling me we're going to separate and I got to work on myself?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense, especially when things are like chaotic.
Right, and it's it's kind of looks like the old model of treatment for this, which is look, you're a codependent, you're a co-addict, you're unhealthy, so you got to work on you because you're so unhealthy here, and that doesn't really work because betrayal trauma is a real thing, and it's not just that you're an unhealthy person, but the fact of the matter is that you have your own responsibility to do your own healing after you've been hurt, right? Yeah. And the analogy I always use is that if I got in a car accident and I broke my femur, I could turn to the person who hit me and I could say, fix my femur, fix it. But I'm going to have to be the one that goes to therapy to strengthen my leg again. And it's going to be painful and it's going to be hard, but I have to go there and I have to do that work. Right?
That's a really good analogy.
Totally is. That's so accurate. So let me just finish this one thought, and that is, remember the scale of 1 to 10, if we're in a really uncomfortable place and we're at a 7, and we get out of what's uncomfortable because we're doing a little bit of work, right? And we get back down to 0, which is like, okay, this is where we normally are when we're not having problems, and I just want to get back to there because it's not uncomfortable. Well, the truth is that Ashlynn and I had to get out of what's uncomfortable. And I think some of the bedrock of that was, meaning we had to go from this really emotionally charged place, right, down to get out of an emotionally charged place, we had to do some work, which included me taking ownership of what my role was, what my addiction is, you understanding what betrayal trauma is, and saying, okay, this is a legit thing for me. But then that's like the baseline. And then all of the work, that's when the work begins. It doesn't begin there, but that's when the work, the real heavy lifting takes place, because guys, on the other side of like, this is a really hard thing to do, like the suck scale, for lack of better terms, even though that's gone away, there's a new norm to adapt to, and then there's all this other growth on the positive, really great, like the connection scale essentially is on the other side. And through the heavy lifting and the work, couples can, like, we grew closer because of that. So guys, the whole idea of like, I want to go back to what's normal
so hang on.
sucks.
So what you're saying is, okay, back in the day, the old goal was no pain.
Yeah.
And now you're looking at it and you're saying, no, like, through that pain is actually, learning how to work through that pain is actually how you create intimacy and connection. And just trying to have no pain in the relationship, that's what a lot of people try to do.
Right.
But the ultimate goal is to actually have real connection and love in the relationship, not just no pain, right?
Yeah. That's very well articulated in a sentence, and it took me like 4 minutes to try to articulate that.
One thing that I see all the time, you guys, that I want to bring up is couples think this. They think, okay, I've had it. This is hard. Things need to change. It's time to go to therapy. And when they gear up for therapy, they think, okay, I can't wait to go sit on Brandon's couch and tell them all the ways in which that person sucks.
Yeah.
All the ways in which that person needs to change, so Brandon can fix them and change it so that I can be happy.
Oh, that was totally, you're describing me, right?
I'm describing most of the couples that end up on my couch,
Oh my
right?
gosh.
And they sit there and they have their finger pointed out saying, you. Well, what about they do this, and what about they do that? And it's true, like, you gotta point some things out. But therapy ultimately isn't that. It's not you come in and we look at how bad the other person is, just a horrible person.
Yeah.
It's, let's look at how you're creating this and you're contributing to this, and how can you shift this and not just be a victim to that other person, right? And people waste a lot of time and a lot of money just sitting on a therapist couch pointing the other finger back at the other person. Now, what happens with betrayal trauma and sex addiction is couples come in and we've got to separate them out, right? So they come in to point the finger, and the relationship in and of itself is so triggering that it's toxic to their own recoveries. So they want the therapist to fix the relationship and push them closer together, but in reality, the relationship has to shift and it has to change. And this is why we'll do things like therapeutic separations, or really kind of limit their contact at first, or their connection at first, because, you know, the one person can give you the wrong look and it fires you off into oblivion, right? Or they can say just the wrong thing, and you don't have the tools and the skills to regulate yourself to deal with that, right? So it's important. Therapy is such a heated place that sometimes it just triggers people and then they leave, and then they fight all week.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
So the relationship can be toxic to recovery. The relationship ultimately, in the end, is a huge asset for recovery, right? Sometimes we have to kind of remove that relationship so that they can work on their individual recovery.
Did you have any thoughts, Ashlynn, of we need to do this together? I don't know if I've ever asked you that before. Like, going into specialized therapy, were you thinking that we would do this together,
No.
How did you respond when it was like, okay, you need to split up and work on yourselves?
Remember very vividly you saying, okay, I found a place that I think we're going to try it, and it's focused more on my stuff, and but we're doing it together. I guess in the back of my head, I just kept thinking, like, he's going to be doing this, and I'm going to go and I'm going to support him. And so I was taken by surprise when it was Amy who's saying, like, oh no, you're going to do all these things. And it was like, oh.
So the right attitude is, he's not going to do this to fix us, right? And she's not going to. Oftentimes it's the wife saying, let's go, buddy. Like, come on into therapy because I'm gonna get us there so that we can get fixed. She's not going in there to fix us, right? You both need to go into therapy saying, I'm gonna fix me,
Right.
And if you go and you say, I'm gonna fix me, then you stand a good chance to fix us. But first you gotta focus on, I'm gonna fix me.
And I think that's probably why it was so uncomfortable for both of us in that first, 6 weeks
Mm-hmm.
of starting was I was like, I shouldn't be here. I judged, I was comparing everyone else's stories to mine.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I shouldn't be here, my pain isn't deep enough. Coby would judge his, and like, they've done way more than I have.
Right.
I shouldn't be here. Am I really an addict? All these things. And it was really uncomfortable to sit in a room with other women who were in pain.
Right.
And I was at the point, most of us, when we come into recovery, we're so super numb of
Right.
feeling. And I, one, didn't know how to use the feeling wheel and understand what I'm feeling to begin with. But then to be surrounded by women who are feeling,
Right.
I was like, oh my gosh, get me out of here.
Right. I love that. But the thing about it is like, Ashlynn, you're talking about your treatment and what you experienced, right? The reason it worked for you.
Yeah, it did.
Why did it work for you?
Because it was me focused. I don't know. I look at it like this. The women that I get to help, and it's not therapy, it's help. We're mentoring. I see a lot less finger pointing when they're working recovery, sometimes on their own.
Yeah.
Like their spouse isn't even interested in recovery.
Yeah.
And it blows my mind because I think you're amazing, one, that you really are working your recovery no matter what. Like,
Right.
despite you are divorced,
Yes.
despite your spouse doesn't want recovery or it to admit blame, or any of that.
So, you know what, Ashlynn? Some of my most healthy clients in the most solid recovery, whatever that is, are women who are recently divorced. And it sounds like, well, it all failed. The
Right.
relationship didn't work. It didn't have. No, they have. In fact, I had a woman tell me today, she's like, you know what? Like, I am so grateful that I ended up in therapy and going through all of this because I'm a completely different person now. Yeah. And she's getting divorced, right? But she's different now, so she's moving forward. She's finding real recovery. So
Yeah, and I know that recovery is like that reclamation of self, but for me, I really feel like recovery for me has been figuring out who I am. I
Not
didn't
read,
know
but like
who I
for
was.
the first time, really.
It's
that was me
finding
too.
myself.
right, that's it.
And so,
That's
yes,
it.
I am grateful for this huge mess that we've lived through
But
because it has made me grow.
but it's counter to. There's a paradox to it that's really confusing. Naturally, when something bad happens, we want to say, "You hurt me. This sucks. It needs to change," right? And in order to really progress in recovery and in treatment, it coming from a place of I see that this happened to me, and now I'm humble to learn from this experience and move forward in it. That's where real healing takes place, both for the addict and both for the betrayed. To say, it's painful, it's hard, it's not okay, I need to learn healthy boundaries, I need to learn all this stuff, but I'm humble now, I'm not blamey, I'm not prideful, I haven't positioned myself above, waiting for somebody else to fix me. I'm humble and I'm open. I love working with those clients where they're just like ready to soak it in.
Mm-hmm.
They just like can't wait to try something new and different in their life. And they get results. They do that consistently, they get results. I think I've told this story before of Coby when I was running the Foundations group. And I came in and I kind of pitched the long-term treatment group to the Foundations group.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I came in and pitched it and I was like, yeah guys, we're going to do this long-term treatment. And I hadn't even finished explaining it, and Coby raises his hand and he says, yeah, I'm doing that, right? Before he even fully knew what it was, he just knew that he needed to do it. And he was open and he was willing, and he's like, where do I sign up? I'm ready.
Yeah, that was it. The pitch was amazing.
I'm not a salesman. So.
No, it was for sure. I will say this. The education that I received in your Foundations course for the 6 or 8 weeks, whatever it was really, really important to help me, one, build a tolerance for therapy and being uncomfortable in an office dealing specifically with this.
Right.
Okay? Because that's a thing.
Right.
I was super uncomfortable just showing up in the parking lot and then the long 50-yard walk into the office.
Yeah.
And then in the waiting room, before it all started, it was like, oh my
these
gosh,
other people.
I'm going to be in the toilet until like 4 minutes after the hour, and then I'm going to go in because I don't want to. That took some time, but through that though, legit, there were some fantastic nuggets of understanding that took place, like really learning that my brain had been wired to cope with life's stress. Yes, this way was like, oh, like this explains why I can't stop.
Right.
This explains so many things. So that piece was super, super important, and I know that piece, that education that took place, would have been diluted, and my own shame would have kept me from learning what I did if Ashlynn was next to me in those classes.
Right, because you would have been triggered and wondering, what's going on with that.
How's she feeling?
Yeah.
Like the autonomous learning process for me.
And the focus on self.
I've never done
so
that.
important.
I've never done that before,
Absolutely.
But it was enlightening, and what's more is it took me getting over what's uncomfortable, and it took me learning a little bit to realize, okay, this is safe.
Yeah.
And if I'm safe here, right, with my therapist, with Amy, I'm safe in group learning foundations with you, and I feel comfortable, then I began to be more open.
Like, let's move
and
forward.
like,
Let's
okay,
do this.
let me really face how bad this actually is for me. But the truth is that as that happened, then I became more comfortable, I became more open, I became more vulnerable, and I became more honest with myself in acknowledging the depths of where I had gone, and that created connection with other guys in my processing group.
Okay, listen, so I want to walk you through the progression, because I know Ashlynn and Coby, both of you have done this, and I think just to, in a nutshell, break down the process of recovery. What that is having the courage enough to go to therapy or to do something different, right? And then find a place that's safe. There's safety there.
Yeah.
And as the safety's there, then it's a lot easier to be humble. And as you're humble, you're open. And as you're open, then you're willing, right? You're willing to try the things they're telling you to do because you're humble and you're safe and you trust them, and right? And as you're humble and open and willing, you're engaged in the process, and you do that consistently, and you create connection. So now you're connected, and once you're connected to other people in recovery, you start connecting back to yourselves. It comes so much easier, right?
Yeah, and there came a time during all this that, we were not working couples therapy. We weren't even doing check-ins really,
right.
With Amy. But we would come back from not talking about what was going on in our groups and things to say, hey, this is something I learned tonight and I want to talk about it. And we started to develop this intellectual intimacy. We were able to talk about things that were vulnerable.
This is where recovery becomes fun.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, I'm discovering this about me, or I learned this at therapy today, or this other guy had this experience I totally related to. And then you're like, oh, tell me about it. I want to hear. I want to see how you're growing. What's happening?
It was really fun. And I did a Brene Brown 12-week shame resiliency class. And to share that stuff was even cooler because I was seeing it through my lenses.
Right.
And working on me and my stuff. But when I'd come back and share something, you could see Coby wheels turning
totally.
Okay, I see this in me.
See, but now you're talking about connection together. So you're talking about your individual recovery, but you're actually starting to connect and affect your marriage, and now you're doing couples work, right?
Yeah.
And the cool part about that particular piece, as far as the intellectual intimacy, that exchange, right? I know for sure that inwardly I was listening to the pieces of shame and shame resilience, because I was doing some of that. I wasn't as focused on shame, but I was addressing shame in my own processing group. And I was exchanging with you, Ashlynn, moments of where I felt shame in my life, not necessarily about addiction, but just areas in life where I recognized how shame showed up outside of the arena of addiction. And that was super important because it was safe for me to talk about how I felt shame outside of addiction,
right.
But I wasn't yet secure and resilient to shame about addiction to share those with you. But that came in time. And so I think that's one of the things to consider is as you grow individually, then you can grow as a couple in your intellectual exchange, but you can share and exchange experiences outside of this in just life in general. And that might be with family, it might be with work, it might be with like
Parenting.
early life, childhood experiences. There's all kinds of ways that intellectual intimacy and bond can build, and then that's a stepping stone to really becoming vulnerable with each other about how shame showed up, or about addiction, or about betrayal trauma, and how emotions felt.
God provided this, like, he threw us a bone here, and what it is that betrayal trauma, sex addiction, it destroys relationships and it destroys trust.
Yeah.
But here's the silver lining and the beauty of it all, is when a couple is willing individually to engage in their own recoveries, and they start to get into recovery, the trust and the safety that they have is tenfold from before the time that all this betrayal trauma and sex addiction came in, because they both are coming to the relationship now rigorously honest, humble, willing to and wanting to be vulnerable with each other, resilient to their own shame, and that creates an amazing relationship that can last forever. Right?
No, I'd ask you to speak on this, Ashlynn. An amazing relationship for sure, but not void of what?
40-minute arguments right before a podcast.
We need to talk, you guys.
No, and that's the cool thing is we had this really intense conversation this morning during our workout, that we paused the workout, we sat, we had this conversation that was hard, it was uncomfortable, and we're both sharing, this is uncomfortable, and we want it out, but we sat in it, we finished, and we hugged. And I'm like, this is recovery.
That would have turned into who knows what back in the day, right?
And it probably wouldn't have been a 40-minute conversation, honestly.
Would have ended quickly and you would have disconnected.
Yes. It would have been, I'm done with my workout, I'm not doing my dailies because I hate you.
Right, and that the other person has all the control over you now, right? But now look at that, you sat in the pain with each other, you worked through it, and you connected on something hard.
Yep, and the cool part about that is that it's interesting that it took place during a workout, because it was a hard, sweaty, tough workout. It was only what 40 minutes, including warm up and cool down. But we paused halfway through, had our conversation, and it's a good thing probably that conversation happened halfway through, because the first half was hard, but we got stress out, we got emotions out before we actually had the conversation. The cool part about that is I really think that was a big contributor in your being able to be vulnerable and say, this is how I'm really feeling. And it also helped with my ability, because I didn't first, to show up and to have empathy and hold space for you, to be there by your side and hear you in your pain. And then once we were able to do that, then we finished the workout. So the daily things that we've done, which we learned through individual recovery, have affected our relationship and our marriage in a big way, to the point where we can work through those so quickly.
Think about it. If I'm not getting good sleep, I'm tired all the time, and I never exercise, and I'm just unhealthy, then all of a sudden I'm supposed to have energy to work on my marriage with my wife.
It's draining.
But my individual recovery work would be my self-care to take care of me. And what do you know? When I do that, then I have that energy to work in my marriage.
Yeah.
So
I needed so many skills. Oh my gosh, you guys. And if we just look at this from a skill set standpoint, just as a human, there were so many skills that I did not learn, nor did I possess when we started our marriage. So I needed work. I needed to have focus on myself in order to skill up so I could show up. Yeah. And then that was just such a necessary, if you just look at it even outside of the realm of addiction and betrayal, we all as individuals need to have skills.
Absolutely.
We do, and I've said it before, I'll say it a million more times, I am so thankful that we were compelled to make change.
Absolutely.
Because most people are just living life how we were. Maybe not our same story, but just okay with mediocrity or less than.
But you know what, Ashlynn, is when even if you're compelled to make change, or if you decide to make change, or whatever it is, once you start to make change, and once you see progress and positive change, you realize that you'll always be making change, and that it's a never-ending process. and you become comfortable with that. You become okay with that. You don't just arrive, then all of a sudden, hey wife, like I've arrived now, so, no, it's constant self-reflection, change, humility, openness to working on ourselves. And that's what creates a healthy life.
Gosh, it's funny that you're saying that, because that's exactly where my mind was going. But I want to hear from you, Ashlynn. What does that look like for us, what he just said? Constant change and growth. What have we done to continue that since since we ended individual work?
We've taken courses. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, so we've taken specific, like, they're human. I call them human courses because they make you a better human. We did a mindfulness-based stress reduction class to learn how to be mindful, connect with our bodies. He's taken men's yoga, prana yoga, to learn how to be with himself and sit in those feelings. The shame resiliency course is, we read books all the time that are self-help. I've said before, I used to numb out with fiction. I don't read fiction anymore. That doesn't mean I can't. I just don't enjoy it. I really enjoy learning and reflecting. I like learning from people who are 2 steps ahead of me, and they're saying, hey, this worked for me, and I'm going to tell you how it can work for you. I like that. We share that. So if he's listening to something for the 3rd time, because that's how Coby rolls, he's going to tell me why it speaks to him, and I love that. And it's cool to see it show up, and we can talk about those things like, hey, I saw, we noticed this morning, our younger daughter is very mindful and present in her everyday life. And my reflecting on that is she had healthier parents when she was younger than our oldest daughter. She's learning how to be mindful and present, but it's a little bit trickier for her because she had different parents.
Right.
We were different.
Right. I think you guys are an incredible example of what I said. Is just openness and constant growth. And one thing about our whole platform and what we do, we get feedback, and we get a lot of times people are kind of assessing you guys, especially like, is Coby totally unhealthy, or how's Ashlynn doing? And the fact of the matter is you're up and you're down, but you're bumping along, and you have this attitude of growth, this growth mindset. And so some days you suck, and some days you're doing awesome, but overall you're awesome.
Well,
right?
Thank you.
The trajectory, that's really what, I appreciate you saying that, honestly, but that's really what we're focused on, is the trajectory, because the long-term trajectory is one of growth, but
we're always going this way.
Right.
But there are days when we're like,
it's the
crash landing.
stock market. It goes down,
Exactly.
but it's trending upward.
For sure.
Always, and it has been, because we're focused on that, and I have every confidence that we're going to continue to hit roadblocks, or we're going to hit bumps in the road. We're going to hit, all of a sudden the road ahead of us is going to be like winding and steep inclines, and that's okay, because we are, as a couple and individually, equipped with the tools and the mindfulness of the tools
to work through
deal
it.
with it.
For sure. And that is one thing. I do get asked that sometimes, like, well, what if? People come up with these what if scenarios.
This happened, or that would happen?
What will you do? Because you're so public. And one, we're different. Like, we know more now. We have tools. I can show up and I can react different than I did 10 years ago.
Right.
And so, we can worry about those things, but I don't waste my time on the what ifs.
And if they come, you'll have the tools to deal with them.
Yeah, the same things that we started doing individually with recovery are legit still the same things we're doing now, because we've grown in so many ways that it's like, why am I going to stop?
Yeah, why stop?
And it's not like we're fixated on recovery. We're fixated on being mindful of the boundaries that we have,
right?
To be safe, right?
Right.
And also to be connected. And we're really habitual in the way that we live. And as long as I continue that, time is going to work to help me to continue to change.
I'll work with you.
Yes, time will work with me to make the change that I really want. So, this has been a rad episode of reflection for me, because we don't often go back to the very early days of recovery, at least in such a concentrated time. So this has been a cool journey of reflection. And I love the fact, and as much as you're not our therapist, Brandon, like, I love the fact that you had handprints all over, like mine, for instance, early. And it's
And
just
you
super
got
meaningful.
to see the Coby before
The
that no one else
transition, the
sees.
shift.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
It's really
It's
cool.
been fun to watch.
It's a meaningful thing.
Thanks.
Okay, so as far as the deep dive on this, I'm actually pretty excited about this because with the deep dive we can talk about the mile markers to be watching for and to make certain that are in place on your own journey as far as working on yourself, but also working on yourselves as a couple, and what are some considerations, what are things that you need to be able to keep front of mind through your journey.
That's it. Yeah, that's what I was hoping to talk about is specific things that individuals can work on in order to get healthy.
Yeah.
So,
And the deep dive's over on Patreon. So
check us out.
You click on episode notes, scroll to the bottom, and it's going to be the first link there. Guys, thanks for being here. Honestly, this is we love the fact that you're here listening. Love to have a rating and love to have a review. So hop on over there on iTunes and leave that for us. And again, share this if you're able to, because there's no telling how much good this can do if you share this with somebody who needs it. Thanks for being here, guys.